Okay, cool. This should work now. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Thanks for joining. I've spent the last couple days working out some of the tech side of this. As honestly, like doing the tech for this is like just as hard as learning how to code. 100%. It's just as hard. Like I spent probably 2.5 hours yesterday just figuring out how to get the microphone connected to OBS, connected to like the other streaming thing. It's crazy. Like I don't know how anyone figures this out, but I'm glad I got this all working. Um, Thanks again for coming out. Uh, anyone who came out last week, we realized last week was the first week, so the whole like hour was spent just trying to get OBS set up. And now that we've got that going, the way I'm going to kind of move forward with this, like in the future and now, is kind of start things off like with a general topic every week to kind of spur a little bit discussion, so everyone kind of learns a little bit, and then that way it's not just an hour of us trying to get the audio working. But I'm glad that we were able to get the audio working last week. So for anyone who's new, uh, and who wants to learn more about tech and learn more about like has any questions or wants to submit questions for these weekly office hours, again, this is for everyone. This isn't for me. My goal here is to turn this into more of like a Q&A thing. But as we kind of build up the community, the best way to kind of get those questions in is to join this Discord server. So I'm going to post a link to the Discord server right now. And there's a chat room there for office hours questions, and that's kind of where I get all the questions. But today I want to go over a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and this is coming as a guy who's spent a big chunk of his career kind of like on the operations side for tech, which isn't the sexiest thing. Everyone wants to learn about like front end and learn how to do CSS animations, but at the end of the day, what really kind of matters and what really pushes projects forward is like the simple operation stuff. That's the difference between like someone being like 99% done on something, saying like, oh, it works on my machine, to having something go from working on your machine to working on everyone's machine is like night and day difference. So I want to really talk about that, and this is really what like all my training like courses are about, and what like my public speaking is about. Is really about how do we make software with less bugs and spend less time on it. So kind of the core to all this has, in my experience, has been setting up on-call rotations. So really, what's an on-call rotation? If you've worked at Google, you worked at Facebook, they've really kind of formalized this. But if you've worked at any startup, and I know like Bo especially, me and him used to work together at some really early stage startups where we didn't have like a formal process set up for this. Thanks, Aziz, for joining this Discord server. But an on-call rotation is, at its core, it's a formal definition of who's responsible for responding to reactive work at any given point in time. Okay? So if you don't have this set up already, you actually already have this set up. So everyone already has an on-call rotation, whether they know or not, but the default on-call rotation is everybody responding to reactive stuff all the time in a really stressed out and illogical, disorganized way. That's the default for on-call rotation. So a great example of that is when I was at a really early stage startup, back when we only had one customer support person. She was based in Texas, and we were based in Los Angeles. And we're doing this for schools, for K-12 schools. So the schools would start in Texas. They start in Texas a few hours earlier than LA because of the time zone difference. And so our first on-call rotation her name was Alex. If the website didn't load, Alex would call us at like 6 in the morning her time. Let me mute my notifications. Alex would call all of us at 6 in the morning our time and just say, guys, like the site's not working. Like, what are you doing? And we'd wake up and we'd fix it. And all 4 or 5 of us engineers would just kind of scramble around until we got the site working again. So there's a couple of problems with that off the bat. One, it meant all 5 of us were stressed all the time. And that's kind of dumb. If you think about it, like you only need most of the time one person to kind of like handle it, triage the issue, and then figure out where to go from there. So we're wasting a ton of time, just all 4 or 5 of us like kind of bumping into each other. That was one issue. And 2, it's just made us all stressed all the time instead of kind of what I like to call delegating the stress out to different chunks of people. And I'll talk about it a little bit more. So that's the first thing to remember. If you don't have an on-call rotation, you actually do have it. You just have the most ineffective, dumb, stressed on-call rotation possible. Everyone already has one. That's kind of the default. So why is formalizing this kind of useful? So what I talk about whenever I give speeches, I really talk about this idea of having a bug funnel. And it's very similar to a sales funnel, except with a bug funnel, we want to like squish it and make it smaller because we want less bugs coming through, versus like a sales and marketing funnel, we want to widen it up because we want more sales, we want more people coming in. So like the bug funnel analogy I use is the bugs come in, we catch them with static analysis, we catch it with unit testing, we catch them with end-to-end testing, we catch some with some monitoring. Then we have an arrow that goes through, and that arrow, which gives you this loop, that's your on-call rotation. So this is kind of like the engine that powers the whole bug funnel. And it really helps to set what I call it sets the tone for responsibility. So I've gone into engineering organizations before, and you guys probably seen stuff like this before, where an engineer will ship a feature and then say, oh, well, it worked on my machine. It's like, and you want to go to them and be like, man, like, you're not just responsible for it to work on your machine. You're responsible for it to work on everybody's. And so what a lot of organizations end up doing is they have like an ops team that's responsible for triaging these issues and everything. And then you have like the product engineer team that's responsible for like making the features. And so what happens really often is these like product engineers will just throw stuff over the wall to these poor ops people. And so not only do you have like multiple people being frustrated at each other, but more importantly, you have bugs just lasting longer in production because people are like passing off blame. So having it clear who's responsible for a certain amount of time for like these on-call rotations helps prevent that, because you can say like, hey, like you're responsible between the hours of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday this week to kind of handle this. The other thing it really that makes these really useful is it prevents what I like to call this like Captain America syndrome. And I use Captain America really specifically because if you've seen the movie The Avengers, there's a scene where Iron Man Tony Stark is talking to Captain America, and Captain America's origin story was he was on like this plane and there's a bunch of stuff happening, and he's like, the only way I can save everyone is if I crash land this plane into the Arctic. And that's where he gets frozen in time, and then he appears like 100 years later. And then Tony Stark brings is asking him about his story, and he just turns to Captain America and says, why didn't you just eject yourself from the plane before it crashed? And so the idea being is Captain America always thinks that he has to like self-sacrifice himself to solve every problem. And you probably I've seen this so many times. There's always at least one Captain America on every engineering team. It's usually the first engineer who's been hired, or like the first kind of CTO. And they feel like the only way to prevent these issues from happening, the only way to fix a website, the only person who knows enough to fix this freaking website is myself. So I gotta like sacrifice everything in order to fix the website. when you have an on-call rotation, you remove that workflow of like, you remove kind of Captain America out of the equation. You go to your Captain America and tell him, okay, here's what's going to happen. You're level 2, and we're going to do rotating level 1. So if the first guy can't figure it out, then he'll call you, and then you can Captain America save the day. Then what they end up realizing, these Captain Americas end up realizing, is 80% of the issues, 90% of the issues can be like fixed by just redeploying the site, or fixed by turning the server off and on again, and then triaging it from there. So that helps the Captain America engineer realize, oh, I don't have to like burn myself out here working 60 plus hours and like always be the one who saves the day. Like I can kind of delegate that out. And then finally, this, I mentioned this a little bit earlier before, having one person be responsible for handling this reactive work on a week-to-week basis means that everyone else can kind of relax and do and work a 9-to-5 job, because they know that for 90% of issues, the on-call person is going to handle it, and that they'll only get called if the on-call person like absolutely positively needs them. And also, it means that when engineers make features, they start making them in a way that makes it easy for on-call people to handle and triage, because they start realizing real quick, like, if I code this in a way with extra unit tests, or I add this little extra bit of documentation, or even better, I add this little bit of automation to like, so when something goes wrong, someone can go fix it, I'm not going to get called, and I don't want to get called. So I'm going to deliver higher quality software. So that's been kind of like, that's what I've really noticed made them useful, and especially helped. It's especially helped a lot going to teams where there's like an engineering culture of like, oh, it's not my job. Like, oh, I make the features, somebody else fixes a bug. It really helps with that. So there's a couple of different ways to like set up these on-call rotations. The first way is just manual. This is actually a great way to do it. Like, this is a pretty good way to do it just at first if you just need something right now, is you open up an Excel, especially if you have a team of like 5 people. Just open up a shared Google Doc and say like, okay, James, you're responsible for the first week. So-and-so you're responsible for second week. Other person you're responsible for third. Other person you're responsible for fourth. And we'll just keep rotate. And you put some dates, times, and you put the engineer's phone numbers beside it. So that way people kind of know. That's a good first step. If you have literally absolutely nothing right now, like you have the default on-call rotation of just everyone stressed all the time, that's something you can knock out probably like at lunchtime. You can make that spreadsheet within like 20 minutes. That's like a good first step if you're just doing that, like if you need something for like today. The problem with that is it starts to not scale very, very quickly. For example, people's phone numbers change, and so they forget to update the spreadsheet. Or it might be a situation where, let's say, oh, I'm on call, but I have like a dentist appointment, so I'm okay with being on call for 99% of that week, but I just need 2 hours to not be on call for just this dentist appointment. Or I'm going to be taking a flight that's only 4 hours, so I don't mind being on call the whole week. Just those 4 hours, I need someone to be on call. So when you have this Excel spreadsheet method, you have opportunities for information to just not make it through. So it's okay to do it first. What I like to do, I like to set up as soon as possible, is setting up like an automated on-call. And there's a lot of different tools for this. You can use PagerDuty. Yes, Aziz uses PagerDuty. I used PagerDuty. I have buddies using OpsGenie. I'm sure there's other ones. As like the good thing is, like, it's more about the concept. It's not really about the tool. So the concept's the key here. So setting up something like PagerDuty, this is the real game changer, because with the Excel spreadsheet method of being on call, you have to rely on one human being calling another human being. And whenever you have to rely on a human talking to a human, you're done. Like, basically, 50% of the time, it's not going to happen, at least. So if you think of information like plumbing information through pipes, when you have a human pipe connected to another human pipe, you might as well like poke a bunch of holes in and see the water streaming out. So the nice thing about PagerDuty or OpsGenie or any of these tools is now you can start not only piping in information from one human to another human, you can start piping in information from a server. So you could set up some monitoring on your server that says if the hard drive space is above 50% capacity, freaking call someone, because that means something's wrong and it's gonna like it's starting to increase. If that hard drive hits 100%, it's gonna cause the server to crash and cause some other issues. So if this ever happens, just call someone. This is super powerful, because then as you start bumping into these production issues, instead of the Captain America engineer having all the solutions in their head, other people start noticing it. And once a week, what I'd like to do is I'd meet with my engineering team. We'd go over every single production issue that happened and then come up with a solution to that. And sometimes that solution's like as simple as, oh, we just need another monitor. Like, we need to set up a monitor to make sure that if this happens again, we know about it first. Sometimes the solution's like, oh, we need to write a unit test to fix that. And so what you find really quickly, and this happened at Remo, is 80% of like the calls were coming from like 4 or 5 things. And those 4 or 5 things were just never getting completely fixed. And so you start seeing these 4 or 5 things happen a couple of weeks in a row, and then it's very easy to go to a product person or go to a business person or go to the CEO and say, hey, we're not working on this feature this sprint, because if we fix these 4 things, we're going to reduce the number of outages like 100%. And then them seeing the progress, that makes that a lot easier on that side. So the other nice thing about using something like PagerDuty or using something like OpsGenie or whatever is it solves the problem of, you can start making some really complicated schedules, which you can't really scale with an Excel spreadsheet. Great example was at Remo, we had engineers all over the world in every single different time zone. So the downside of that was trying to coordinate a meeting was a pain in the butt. But the nice upside about that was we had a really really well thought out on-call schedule. Like we could split it out. Instead of one person being 24/7 on call for a week, we would have 3 people be 8 hours in their respective time zones on call for that week. So we'd have three on call. So the trade-off was you were on call more often, but the great part was you were only on call like 9 to 5 your time zone. So all the engineers were like, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that deal. I'll be on call 3 times as often, but only 9 to 5. Yeah, 100% take that. Because the worst part about being on call is getting woken up at night. And so now we are able to remove like the worst part, the worst part about being on call. I've also seen setups at other companies, like Z and I, we worked at a company called System One together, and that was kind of a conglomerate of a bunch of companies all over the place. So one of the like the director of DevOps guy, Morgan, he did like a little presentation showing the on-call schedule, and it was like bonkers, because it was like, if this team in Colorado has their on-call rotation, but if 2 people don't pick up the phone, then it goes to whoever's on call in Venice. But if it's at a different time for a different software project, let's say if MapQuest went down, it goes to the MapQuest team first. But if StartPage goes down, it goes to the StartPage team first. And then it was like kind of set up there. So it seems kind of complicated because it is, but what that allows you to do is it allows you to funnel the information to the right person more quickly, and which solves two things. One, it fixes the bug faster, which is better for the better for the customer. But two, it makes sure the people who have accepted responsibility for a project are alerted sooner too, and it helps split up the responsibility in smaller and smaller chunks. So that incentivizes teams to make sure the projects run more smoothly, because the smoother you set up the project, the more attention to detail you put into like the testing and everything, the less calls you get. So it gives like positive and negative reinforcement for a team to like make a software project good, which is like a win for the customer too. The other kind of final trick I found for these on-call situations was, here's a good example. Back when I was at NFL, I was on a team. It was me and one other guy, and we were kind of like the front-end DevOps team. So one of our responsibilities that we put onto ourselves was making sure that the staging servers always worked. The problem there is you'd have people, other developers who are trying to just like finish something quick for now, would go in and kind of like change some settings on the staging servers or change some settings on deployments that would cause like stage to go down. So we'd like scramble to go fix like other people's messes basically. And that was kind of like, that was a crummy feeling on two sides. One, it's like annoying because now you're eating up your time and you feel like you're fixing another person's mess. But the other crummy side is it meant that the other engineers didn't really realize how big of a issue they were causing, and so they didn't feel responsible for it on their own. So I kind of took the idea of this on-call rotation over at Remo, and when I first joined Remo, there was no person who wanted to take responsibility for stage working. So I'm like, I gotta make sure stage is working. Nobody wants to take responsibility 100%. I got an idea. How about I funnel this into this PagerDuty on-call setup? So what we did was, not only did you get alerted when there's a production issue, but we also started funneling in alerts when there's stage issues. So if one of the things we had was when you merged code into master, it automatically deployed a stage. If that ever stopped working, if a stage deploy ever failed, it would automatically alert who's on call. So this solved the problem of like the responsibility problem, where what was happening before is if stage didn't work, people would be like, oh, stage isn't working. And no one would go fix it. Here it'd be like people knew, oh, if stage wasn't working, who's on call right now? Oh, so-and-so's on call. They're going to go fix it. And if they can't fix it, they'll escalate to the next person. And if they can't fix it, it'll escalate to me. Escalate to the leader. So I started kind of using this on-call as a way to not only funnel in like super duper high priority production issues, but general like reactive work. So another example, if like a marketing person needed someone to fix a tracking pixel somewhere like really quickly because they're going to do an ad spend, that would get funneled into the on-call rotation too. And what was also really nice about that was I could then go to different leaders and go to the CEO and say like, here's all the like ad hoc requests engineers getting. These chunk of requests we can actually automate. If you give us a little bit of time next sprint, we can figure out a way to automate them within a couple of days. These requests, we were told they were urgent, and so we were acted on, but I'm realizing now looking at it, like so-and-so, the head of marketing, the head of sales, the head of this other department, shouldn't be calling this urgent. This wasn't actually urgent. So if something like this happens again, please don't like mark this as urgent because it's taking up time from other stuff. So being able to have that data too and show other teams, other non-engineering teams, like the part of the reason why this feature was late was over those last 2 to 4 weeks, we were getting all these ad hoc requests from your team that you said were more important than this feature. So of course it's late, and we agreed to that. So that was the really big like eye opener too, was leveraging this on call setup not only for like super high priority production issues, but like small stuff too. But that's everything. That's kind of like my summary of on call stuff and what I've learned over the last little while doing on call. If there's any questions, I'm going to take a look at some of the chats. I'm going to take a look at Discord, see if there's any questions on that at all. Here we go. I'm getting used to all these monitors. There's the Z. And then we can see here this. So we have that here. So there isn't too many questions for this today. I'm going to wrap things up a little bit early today and get back for lunch. But thanks everyone for coming out. I appreciate it. Again, if you want to join part of the community, I have the Discord link that I posted. Join that. We're going to be talking a lot more on the engineering side there. I'm going to be streaming every single week and have a different topic every single week, really focusing on engineering, whether that's like for new engineers who want to get into the tech industry, or for engineering teams who feel like they're working really hard but getting nowhere, but feeling really stressed and not delivering results. The thing that's really driving me here is I truly believe that as an engineer, you should be able to work 40 hours a week max, deliver a lot of value, and not be like running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to fix everything all at once. That being said, thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Bo. Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Z, for coming out. And I will see you next week. I need to just